Hey, good evening. Good Monday to you. What's going on, guys? I hope everybody can hear me okay. If you can't, say something. Say, hey, we can't hear you, as I'm sure you will. But anyway, how are you? How is everybody? Sounds great. That's awesome. That's really, really good to know. So with a lot of help from Bo Ganora and Yang Yan Zhao and my buddy Eye of the Beholder, I was able to install and troubleshoot Voicemeeter. And that works as a virtual microphone pass-through. So I am now able to do that. I can do video switching with one source, and I don't have to faff around with all the nonsense I've been faffing around with. And it makes me, there he is. I see you over there, Imperial Ramblings. I see you. Wow, such production, much audio. But I'm glad to know it's working. Happy Monday, everyone. I hope you're where you can sit back and have a cold one, put your feet up. Maybe you just got done with a delicious dinner. Maybe you're waiting on it. Maybe you're driving somewhere. Don't have a cold one if you're doing that. Yes, Luther, unfortunately, you failed to detect traps and you fell into a 10 by 10 by 20 pit. In 45 minutes to an hour, you'll be able to climb out. You know, Luther, one day my YouTube streams are going to be really good. And when that happens, you're going to be like, man, I have to stop. I have to stop slagging Bill. I got to start complimenting him now. Who am I kidding? We both know that's not going to happen. Greetings, Lord Corion. How are you? Good to see you. Wow, 13 people out there waiting. Hello, all you people. I want to give an update. I want to give an update on the GWOC, the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention. Imperial Ramblings, please send me that link real quick for the band page, not BANNED, but band, BAND. It is a sign-up page that we're using for the GWOC. So you can go and sign up to run games, and you can go and you can sign up to play in games. But that will be what we're using. Now, there were some questions. There was a little bit of confusion yesterday. I was chit-chatting with someone, and they're like, so you're going to stream all the games? No, I am not going to stream all the games. I might stream a game. I might stream a game demo. But you really want to be in the mix. You want to be in there at the virtual gaming tables, playing games. I'm going to throw this up in the chat. I'm going to put this in the chat so you guys can see it. And I'm going to sticky that. I'm going to star it. I put a star on it so you guys can see it there. But that is where you can go and sign up for and start building hype around your games. Now for dates, this is what I am thinking. May is a month of many events. We have Memorial Day, I believe is the weekend of the 27th, 28th, 29th. Not a lot of people are going to be wanting to do sitting indoors and playing games at the effective start of summer vacation, right? Am I right? I'm right. The 8th, I believe, is Mother's Day. And if any of you out there have a significant other and you have little ones or grown ones or whatever, and you think you're going to spend Mother's Day weekend sitting behind your computer gaming and then blame it on me that you didn't do anything for mom, ha 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 ha. That's not going to happen. So what I am thinking is the weekend of the 20th through the 22nd, possibly even the 19th through the 22nd of May for guac. That is tentative, but it is rapidly starting to cure. It is rapidly firming up. If a large majority of people out there have an issue with this, please comment in the Discord, comment on the YouTube page, let me know. But I am thinking the 19th through the 20th through the 22nd of May is when we will have the great underground online gaming convention. I am hyped about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, some people have asked me about badge levels. Some people have asked me about merch. This is a lot more laid back than that, guys. Fred Daniel says, G1 was the first module I recall purchasing. At the time, it seemed much more professionally made than non-TSR modules. Cardstock, not newsprint. That is a good and wise observation, Fred. And we're going to get to G1 in a little bit. I promise. We're going to get to G1 in just a little bit. But that's the important thing, is the date we are looking at. I'm thinking the 19th through the 22nd. I'm also very much of the mind that the saddest time at a convention is the Sunday afternoon / evening. You know, there's like one game being played off in the corner of the hall, but over like this side of the hall, there's like event staff breaking down tables and all the vendors, but one, because he knows a guy in this game over here is gone, that sort of thing. So schedule your games till late into Sunday night. I don't care. The space is going to be on Discord. Oh, and let me clear up another thing, because there has been some people wondering, well, I don't want my game streamed. Don't stream my game. Your games aren't going to be streamed. My games aren't going to be streamed. Very little of what I do will be streamed at all. And if I stream something, it will be like I said, it will be like a demo of Space Hulk or something like that. Like if I have a really elaborate setup for my AD&D game with Dwarven Forge, I might stream that on the channel. But this is not a streamed event. So don't feel like, you know, oh man, I got to get a bunch of cameras and stuff. You don't. You do not. And I want to emphasize that. Adam Black, hello. No, you wouldn't miss it. I set it up specifically because I knew those dates worked for you, Adam. I didn't. Don't tell him that. Anyway, so other events coming up later this week. I'm going to have a guest on the show. I believe he'll be coming in from Europe. I mean, he won't be here. Won't be coming in like sitting in the studio. Will guac be extra? BYOG. Bring your own guac, Corian. You pretend like that's true. You keep on being awesome, Adam. But yeah, I don't want to say who it is because I want to make sure that he's going to be able to make it. Because, I mean, he's in Central Europe. I'm in Central Florida. You know, my shows are at 7 o'clock. So I'm basically asking him to be up at, I think, like 3 or 4 in the morning to come on the live stream. So we'll see. But if that happens Thursday. Next week, the user known as Ricky Maru will be here. He wanted to come on and talk about the virtues of Mork Borg, which as I now understand it, is not a championship tennis player from the late 70s and early 80s. So he'll be here talking about that. In following weeks, and I mentioned this chap earlier when I was talking about the troubleshooting that we had done with the audio last night. Eye of the Beholder has tentatively planned out. He's got irons in the fire. He's got some stuff that's going to shake the foundations of the AD&D world, or at least be fun to look at and use in your games. He will be here next. No. He will not be here next week or the week after or anything like that. But tentatively, he is going to be coming in and coming on the show down the road. Down the road, that's going to happen. And we're really looking forward to that because he's a great guy. And was an early supporter of the show. And so, yeah, he'll be on, and that'll be awesome. That'll be awesome. Kyle is out for at least the next couple of weeks. I'm flying solo, and I got to say, on Wednesday nights, I'm going to feel like I'm like just staggering around. But don't worry, because we're going to have Against the Giants content, almost a contest, Against the Giants content to go into. So we'll have plenty of room. But when Kyle comes back, we are going to hit the mattresses. Kyle and I are going to answer all of your AD&D questions. Go out onto the YouTube channel. Look in discussions and community. You will see where I announced that this series is coming. Put your questions in there and ask any AD&D questions you've got. We will storm the beaches with you. Full fire support to help you understand AD&D. Because I've got the static how to play AD&D video series, which seems to be pretty well received. But I think there's a lot of edge cases that come up. I was talking to Kyle about a few things that I, as a DM, I'm like, how would you rule this? And he's like, yeah, no, I'd definitely make it a 2-hit roll. And I thought about it and I said, yeah, exactly. So go leave questions there. Don't put them in the comments here because I'll forget them unless they're super chatted. Don't put them on Discord because Discord is like a sieve, you know? It's like, but I said such and such to you on Discord 2 weeks ago. It's IRC, guys. It tends to scroll by really quickly. So go put your questions out in that. Do you guys need a link? Do you need me to get the link for that and share it here in the live chat if you've got any questions? Because I know there's a lot of people that want to love first edition AD&D, but they have questions and they have concerns. But, you know, we'll do our best to answer them. Have I ever been to Have I ever been to Garen Fest? I have not. That sounds like a lot of fun. I've been to a few Ren fairs and I had fun. I've been to some SEA events and I also had fun, but I have never been to Garen Fest. Neat. And I don't know about the rest of the country, but the weather, at least down here in Florida, is beautiful. So it's a wonderful time of year. Nutshell Gulag has been a guest a few times, and she was on the second anniversary 12-hour live stream, which I'm still kicking myself for not waiting for a few days, like waiting another week to do that. Because when I got monetized, that would have been nicer. But anyway, yeah, no, she was messaged me. She's like, yeah, there's like a couple of feet of snow on the ground. Trees have been knocked down. I'm one of the few people. Our building is like one of the few in my area that has power. Good Lord. Have I ever used Arduino? No, the Arduino Grimoires fascinate the heck out of me, but I have never used them. No. Lots of stuff. Swords, jousting, and boobs. Fun trifecta. What else do you need? Truly, what else do you need? So speaking of basics, first of all, yes, we are going to talk about G1 Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. If you're here waiting for that and you're like, when is he going to do it? Volcano God, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. Volcano God says, love how you've grown this channel and how you've been able to share your valuable and nuanced views on AD&D and old school gaming in general. Keep up the good fight, brother. Thank you. Thank you, Volcano God. I appreciate that, man. I really do. I really do, dude. I appreciate the super chat. I appreciate the comment. That's awesome. Salute. And it dovetails very nicely into the next thing I was going to talk about. Nobody in this audience, it's weird. It's nobody in this audience, but this is not something I set out to do. I want my channel to be popular. But apparently I've kind of rocked the boat a little bit for a couple of people. Not in the sense that like it's internet blood sport time, you know, take out your riot guns, take out your knives, drop your shopping bags and struggle for your lives kind of thing. That's not what I'm talking about. But I've gotten a little bit of ping back from people. Random internet hijinks. Have I ever played or looked at the books for guy? Yes, I was, yes, on Legendary Adventures, no on Dangerous Journey. I played Legendary Adventures with Gary. I was tapped to write 2 source books for Legendary Adventures, but Gary passed away before I could get into it. And I had the entire Legendary Adventures rule set, which I needed gas and grocery money, and I had to part with them. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, there have been some people ancillary to my audience, kind of in the outer solar system, if you will, who, like an object in the outer solar system, have, you know, perturbed the orbit a little bit, as it were. And, you know, I've gotten some, well, gee whiz, Bill, why don't you talk more about this scene in gaming? Why don't you give more credence to this ultra stripped down OSR thing? Rich Lopez, hail to you, my friend. And I've even had some people say, it's good to see you, you know, pushing out. Would you consider doing like a show? Just give like an old schooler's perspective on 5e. Maybe do like a series on 5e. I love the popularity that this channel has gotten. I really do. And it's not because I'm in love with the sound of my own voice, because I don't go back and watch my shows again. If somebody says, you said this specific thing, can you clarify it? I'll go back and listen to it and just cringe the whole time because I don't like the sound of my own voice. But well, thank you, Random Internet Hijinks. I think somebody's been reading ahead. Let me take you guys on a quick nostalgia tour before we get over to talking about G1. This is the first Dungeons and Dragons that I ever owned. I didn't have any rules. This is not the exact copy, but this is B2. This is Keep on the Borderlands. This poor copy is just like in pieces. But I still, you know, it's good and it's precious to me. It's usable, right? This is Keep on the Borderlands. I sussed out everything I could about understanding D&D with this. That was all the D&D I had. And we didn't play right, but we made up things and we made it work. So no, I did not spring forth from Zeus's forehead with a full stack of OD&D books in one hand and AD&D books in the other, and a Cheeto encrusted neck beard as armor. But this is it. I will play this module like that. I will take you into the caves of chaos and kill your entire party there if I'm feeling it, you know. I love this module. Everything you need to understand how to play Dungeons and Dragons at a bare bones basic is in this module alone. I love it. The next D&D book that I got, and you might say, oh, that must be an AD&D player's handbook, and you started to expand out and understand. Is this. I got a monster manual. Not this one. I don't have my original AD&D books anymore. I wish I did. I desperately wish I did. This right here. This is my monster manual. It's not even the first one I got when I got back into AD&D. That was a Jeff Easley covered one that was seriously falling apart. Like the first thing I did when I got it was run librarian's tape on the inside and down the spine. This one is much older and is holding up a lot better than that one. It's 5, Adam. It's 5. So reconciling this and this were very confusing. Now, I understood pretty quickly that I didn't have all the rules in here, but this was kind of awesome. So I'm going to set those aside. The next D&D I got, and you might be thinking now, if you don't know me and you don't know this channel, was, well, it was a player's handbook, right? You got to, like the Anakin and Padme meme. You bought a player's handbook next, right? You bought a player's handbook next, right? No. This Dungeon Master's Guide. That was the next book I had, and this opened my third eye, if you will. This is the conversation that Gary Gygax has with you about playing D&D, about playing AD&D. Whether you want to use the rules in here or not, people say, what do you think of Master of the Game and Role-Playing Mastery by Gary Gygax? I say he said it best in here. Those books are kind of dull. This is the best. Luther, you've definitely hit on an important fact there. It's D&D. You don't need all of the rules. The DM is the rules. How does that module work with AD&D? Very well, Vincent. It works very, very, very well. Because you have to understand, B2 was originally written for Holmes Basic, and Holmes Basic is meant as an introductory tool to getting people used to AD&D. Its rules are very different, but its tone is very much AD&D. So this was the next step. The next 2 steps actually, after that, just because I saw it in Zares and I wanted it. Slate Pits of the Undercity has some of the best cover and back piece art ever on a D&D module. Grab your copy, go look at the back of a PDF or something, and tell me this doesn't look like an animation cell. I wanted to see the show that this is based on. The cover is almost as good, but the back looks like a gosh darn animation cell. But Slave Pits of the Undercity was just kind of a sidestep, and I didn't really get it. It was just fun adventure to have. And I promptly hole punched it so it would go into a 3-ring binder. So if you ever find a very dog-eared hole punched copy of Slave Pits of the Undercity, that might be the one that I had and then sold years later and kind of made the rounds. The next D&Ds that I got, finally, something that had players' rules in it. But not really, because this didn't exactly mesh up to AD&D. A lot of differences between this and AD&D. But I could at least fake it at that point if somebody really wanted to run a long running campaign, which ours usually lasted like a day or two after school. Then this blue gem and its associated module. Whoops. An Isle of Dread. Again, very cool. Didn't help me understand the game. Kind of cool. More confusing than not, because now I just didn't know what to think. How does AD&D fit into this? How does this fit into AD&D? Didn't really grok that they were separate products. My girlfriend at the time, Wendy, got me this for Christmas one year. So that was the next D&D book I had. And then finally, my collection was completed with a copy of Deities and Demigods. I didn't own a player's handbook until somebody left one at my house sometime in the 90s, and it went on a bookshelf. And it was finding it and opening it and reading it and realizing not only that I missed AD&D, but that I missed out on a lot of AD&D, and I fell back in love with it. And now we kind of start to come to the crux. This is just one that I grabbed off the shelf. When I went out there, hello, Quick Save F5, on the broad internet, and discovered AD&D or Dungeons and Dragons Usenet groups and so on, I dove headlong back into AD&D. It took perusing one of the few remaining copies of Keep on the Borderlands that I had that came from the Moldvay rules. Not my first copy, but my second copy. And that player's handbook over the course of an evening to make me go, I really miss this and I want it back. And that was in like 1997. And so I discovered out on Usenet an entire group on Usenet. And I started asking questions. And the first question I asked was, where do I get the books again? Because I went out looking in used bookstores, couldn't find it. eBay wasn't really a thing. And in 1997, Alta Vista was the search engine. So I looked high and low, and finally I discovered Paul Stormberg's Treasure Trove auctions on Usenet. I got a Dungeon Master's Guide, a Player's Handbook, a Monster Manual, somebody for the princely sum of $20 and a copy of Cyberpunk 2020 that I had got me a Deities and Demigods with Elric and Cthulhu. And did I mind that one of the pages was torn? No. So that was coming back to the fold for me, and going on Usenet and looking at the AD&D, or I did it again, the Dungeons and Dragons news group. I started asking. Now, let me tell you something, guys. You'll note in that stack of books, there is no copy of Unearthed Arcana. And I didn't subscribe to Dragon. I'd see people talking about cantrips. What's cantrip? I literally was 27 before I knew what a cantrip was. And I started asking about all of this, and the pushback in Usenet was, look, just calm down, cool your heels, relax, don't bother learning AD&D again. 3rd edition is going to be out, and you're going to like that. But I remember and love this. This is what I like. Well, no, you're going to play when 3rd edition comes out, it's going to do away with all this Gygax crap. And I'm like, that's what I love. That's what I like. The Gygax stuff. And then I stepped both feet up to the knees in body temperature edition war. That was where I first ran into edition war. Bye, Luther. I found that there were people who just didn't like AD&D. And they seemed angry at the fact that I liked AD&D. That coming back to D&D after, let's see, mid-80s to late mid-90s, after a 12-year absence, 12 or 13-year absence, that I needed to shut up, play 3rd edition, embrace it, and be happy. It really seemed to piss people off that I was trying to get back something that I enjoyed. And so we come back all the way around full circle because we're a half an hour in, and I want to give you guys more than just a few minutes of Against the Giants. I don't want you sitting out there going, when do we get to Against the Giants? This guy's faked us out. That's not, no. Grumpy Grognard, how did I feel about Unearthed Arcana? I think Unearthed Arcana should have its own episode. Let me answer your question with a very vague statement. We'll do an episode about Unearthed Arcana. You're very correct, yes, Mar. There is no accounting for taste in this world. But Grumpy Grognard, we will get to it. I love Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and I have explained why. Warts and all. To paraphrase Ned Flanders, I even like the stuff that contradicts the other stuff that I like in the rules. It is my first and truest love. It's not like a car that has parts that have worn out and I can't get anymore. It's not like a computer that doesn't run modern software. Guess what? The graphical fidelity of AD&D is as sharp and crystal clear now as it was when it was released. You can't say that about a computer released in 1978. Not too many people running ray traced graphics on an Apple II, yeah? Greetings, Michael Connor. I am never changing my focus away from AD&D and how much I love it and how great I think it is. Do you play an OSR game, but you came here because you plug old modules into the OSR game you play? Play AD&D instead. I think you'll find that it's awesome. I'm not saying the game you play is bad. I'm not here to tear down people. I don't do that. That degree. There are some YouTubers who can be very successful with their negativity. I'm not one of them. I don't thrive on negativity. I like to rant a little bit sometimes, blow off some steam. You're getting into tabletop games for the first time and you see 5e out there and you've stumbled on my channel, play AD&D. AD&D is what I love, guys. I like OD&D a lot, and I can appreciate that AD&D's roots are locked in. They're intertwined. I love first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That is what this channel is about. When it comes to the role-playing game parts, we'll review other role-playing games. I like lots of other role-playing games. But if you start that hypothetical, okay, what if you were on a desert island and you can only have one role, AD&D. I wouldn't let you get the word playing finished out of your mouth. AD&D, first edition AD&D. Gary's Baroque linguistics, his writing style, the adventures, which we're going to get to one in just a few minutes. First edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. If you just look at a set of rules as a spreadsheet that gets you from level 1 to level 20 in N number of weeks with X number of steps, AD&D might not be for you. AD&D is an unmapped city that stretches infinitely in all directions. There are wise men and fools, fakers and prophets, con men and just men. It's all there for you to explore. There is no clear avenue that starts at the beginning and takes you to the castle in the middle. AD&D is what I love. And it is what this live stream is and will always be about. Does that mean that I hate other games? No. No. I love Johnny Cash. Does that mean I hate Loretta Lynn? Absolutely not. I love Led Zeppelin. Does that mean I hate Black Sabbath? No. But if you ask me what I love, I'm going to tell you unequivocally, it's AD&D. And it always will be. If you ask me, if you come to me and say, I'm having a role-playing game problem, Bill, my answer, if it fits, is going to be, well, have you tried playing AD&D? You know, I'm looking for a game that's got swashbuckling, but I want it to have some parts where, you know, things can be kind of moody and thespian and emotional. Have you tried AD&D? Well, I want a game that has mechanics that reward good role playing. That's in AD&D. We've talked all about XP in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and how good role play is rewarded. I love AD&D, guys. That's my testament. So that's what I wanted to get off my chest, and I hope you guys appreciate that. Let's talk about G1 Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, which I would damage it if I tried to pull it that way. So I got to lean over and pick it up. This is G1 Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. Now, I am only fortunate enough to have a pastel copy of Steading a Hill Giant Chief, because this, as you might notice from the little emblem here, is the TSR 25th anniversary edition. You can get this in PDF form, I believe. Let me check DriveThruRPG real quick and see if they have got that one up, unless one of you guys wants to try and beat me to it. DriveThruRPG. Yes, leave my Gmail account. What are you doing? Oh, I got to tell you guys something funny real quick while I'm It is not available as pod, but we have talked about taking stuff to Lulu. You know what? This is one of the few that, like, I would say, yeah, just print out a copy on your printer at home because you're not going to burn up the ink. Well, maybe don't do the peach cover or you'll run out of red ink. So when I play AD&D on Tuesday nights for you guys in Gamma World on Friday nights, I have a tendency sometimes to, at a very, very, very low volume, not so that I can't hear the players over it or anything, but have a little music going to help keep me focused and to kind of keep me in the mood. The way the soundboard works now, if I play YouTube audio, the soundboard will pick it up and broadcast it out through Streamlabs or StreamYard. So I will get copyright struck. Anyway, Gary took a break while he was writing, I believe, the Player's Handbook, or perhaps it was a Dungeon Master's Guide. I think maybe it was a Dungeon Master's Guide. Gary took a break from writing, and over the course of like 8 weeks, wrote G1, G2, and G3. This is a master class in simple design. This is the Sidewinder missile of classic D&D modules right here. It is simple, and it is the standard on which everything else is built, and it changed everything. Now, a lot of people say, look, Bill, Caverns of Thracia, Modron, Tegel Manor, this is the original mission-based. You're not just going exploring AD&D module. Gary didn't think people wanted to that people wanted to just read other DM stuff, but they did. Judges Guild and other smaller third-party companies, pre-published adventures sold like hotcakes. And for TSR to not get some of that, well, I mean, that's just foolishness. So he wrote this, and it was huge. This is a master class in design, in adventure design. Let me show you something. There's 2 maps here. They're kind of blurry, non-repro blue. It won't show up real well. But there's your there's your 2 maps right there. The upper portion is here, and the dungeon level is here. They're not huge. They're not what you would call mega dungeons. And despite the complaints of haters, they're not illogical, treasure-laden holes. There are specific functions to every part of these dungeons. Now, here's the book. This, if I could steadily hold this edge on and get it exactly on the camera, it barely shows up. This is 8 pages long. 8 pages, 2 massive dungeon maps. Let's dive into it. If you don't know the premise of Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, this is book 1 of Fellowship of the Ring in terms of AD&D greatness. So we start off, we have some great Dave Sutherland art here. Party facing off against a giant. And of course, our cover is that, but in this mono orange. On the back, we have the steading itself. That's sort of almost Japanese pagoda-like. Vinny says, what was the reasoning behind using Repro Blue? I should preface this with, I get they did it to prevent the maps from being photocopied, but why? To stop people from mimeographing the modules and pirating them. It was an anti-piracy tool. So, Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. 8 pages. Let's take a gander at the background, there's on page 2, this counts as a page, by the way, so it's really more of a 7-page module. Are there any big page blocking illustrations? Oh, why did it foil photocopiers? I don't know. I don't know what the light of early photocopiers did. I do know if you remember those plastic covers you could get for book reports, they came in all kinds of colors, blue, green, yellow, red. If you took a yellow one and put it over the non-repro blue, it turned the non-repro blue dark green, which shows up as black to a black and white photocopier. They did care about them being photocopied back in the 70s. Very much. Understand, they got more responses from Dungeon Masters when they did a survey after the release of the first print run of original D&D than they had sold copies. They had a few dozens of copies that they kept themselves, and then another 1,500 minus those that they sold, and they had 2,000 or 3,000 people respond. And people would bring mimeographed copies and photocopied copies to them to get autographed or ask, like right here on this page, it says, yes, that's correct, Praxis. So let's go in here. So page 1 is not module. One of the pages, a third of it is illustration. The fight in the kitchen. And that's something else that's very lean on the ground, is illustrations. We have the Errol Otis Steading illustration here. We have this awesome piece here that's the adventurers hiding out in the cloakroom. But let's get into this now. I've prattled on. This is all your box text. Background. Giants have been raiding the lands of men in large bands, with giants of different sorts in these marauding groups. Death and destruction have been laid heavily upon every. I don't have reading glasses on. You guys will have to excuse me. Death and destruction have been laid heavily upon every place these monsters have visited. This has caused great anger in high places, for life and property loss means failure of the vows of noble rulers to protect the life and goods of each and every subject, and possible lean times for the rulers as well as the ruled. Therefore, a party of the bravest and most powerful adventurers have been assembled and given the charge to punish the miscreant giants. These adventurers must deliver a sharp check, deal a lesson to the clan of hill giants nearby, or else return and put their heads upon the block for the headsman's axe. That's right. If you come back and you haven't done the job, your lives are forfeit. Oh, that's actually much easier if I hold it out here. Yet this charge is not as harsh as it may seem, for all have been fully equipped with all standard items needed for both wilderness and dungeon exploration, and each member of the party has likewise been given the finest horse available. Guides are available to help, and the leader has a splendid map showing exactly where the great timber fortress of the chief of the hill giants in the area is. This chief, called Nosra, is a grossly fat and thoroughly despicable creature, sly and vicious, loving ambush and backstabbing. Furthermore, the party has been cautioned to expect a secret force, some motivational power behind the unusual bonding of different races of giants. More surprises might be in store. Finally, the party has been instructed to keep any and all they chance upon. This to be their reward for the perils they are to face. They are to follow any clues discovered if such point towards the sinister hand suspected guiding the rising. Should they determine exactly the reason they are to return at once, some relic of great evil might be at hand. That's it. That's it. That's your job. That's your job in studying the Hill Giant Chief. And what a job it is, and what an admonishment you're given. G1 sets the stage for players facing an epic adventure, a journey that will take them through 3 increasingly difficult fortresses. Now, I've heard people say that you can assault the Steading with a party of characters of 7th level. I wouldn't try it. Now, I'm not going to go through one encounter after another, but I want to give you guys just a hint. Imagine you've opened this, okay? Let's go back. Let's go back to 1978. I've sat down, I've gone on, University Access TV, and I've talked about Dungeons and Dragons. Now this has come out. This has come out. Guys, I just opened this and I'm looking through this. You got to fight giants. But listen to this. If you've never read this module, there's a little indication in here that something's not right. Something is very wrong, in fact. And it's not just the giants banding together. Remember, Gary kind of hinted at it in that introduction that I murdered. You can use this live stream as evidence in my court trial. Now dig this. Up into this point, if your parties hadn't been to if your players hadn't been to Gen Con and they hadn't gotten to play before, why would I publish blue maps these days? I think it's just a nostalgia trip. Your party didn't go to Gen Con or Origins. They didn't get to play this in Attorney. This is the first crack they've had at it. They've assaulted the giants. They've fallen back. They've healed up. They've rememorized spells. They've hit them again, wave after wave, encounter after encounter. And there's so many Gygaxisms. You think it's just a fortress full of giants, at least the upper levels. There's so many things. There's a burned out torch stuck in one of the walls. Would your party think to take a close look at it and find out that it's a sword of cloud giant slaying that's been hidden behind an illusion? No, of course not. You're not going to be walking around waving a detect magic spell around everywhere. But I feel a bit like Jack Burton. So far, everything's nice and normal, a nice false front. You're like, okay, army of giants. Something's guiding them. But we think we've got a handle on this. Judicious use of fireball, cloud kill, power word stun, meteor swarm here and again, lightning bolt, few wands of magic missiles, some backstabbing from our assassins or thieves, the occasional raised dead for the party fighters. Then you make it down to the second level. And here's where things start to get weird. Now, the dungeon level has wandering monsters. It's got rooms and areas. It's got bugbears in it. It's got a fire giant running a forge. It's got orc slaves underfoot. It's got a pen with manticores keeping some treasure. But then we get to 17A. I'm going to hold this out. 17A. Your party's just meandering along. So Encounter Area 17, I think, deserves a little bit of a lead-in. Oh, yes, Mar, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. But I like your enthusiasm. Passage to 17A, blocked by stones. Orcs have piled finished and rough stones before the door to close it. The wooden door itself is bound with moldering bands of bronze, and a heavy bronze bolt secures it. The corridor is disused, dusty, and reeks disgustingly. 17A. Now everything begins to sort of, the focus comes in a little bit. Weird abandoned temple. Now remember, kids, back in the day, you don't read everything in the description to the players. This room is of faintly glowing purplish green stone, carved with disturbing shapes and signs, which seem to stare out from the walls and columns, to shift position when the watcher's back is turned. Touching the wall makes one chilled, and contact with a pillar causes the one touching it to become nauseous. At the far west end of the temple is an altar of pale yellow-gray translucent stone. It feels greasy to the touch, but it has no effect upon those who touch it. Behind this altar is a flight of low, uneven stairs which lead to an alcove with a concave block wall of purplish-black, glossy-appearing substance. If any creature stands before this wall and gazes upon it for one round, a writhing amorphous form of sickly mauves and violets can be seen stretching its formless members towards the viewer. This sight causes the creature seeing it to have a 50% chance of becoming insane. If the creature does not go insane, a touch upon the curving wall causes a scarab of insanity to appear upon the altar for the first one doing so, and a 5,000 GP gem for the rest. For the next. $18. Vestry? There is a question mark. The visible walls of this place bear faint traces of disgusting murals and bas-relief depictions of nasty things. A flight of edged, step-like stones slants sharply downwards forward to the south, towards the south, But this way is completely blocked by tons of stone and blocks and rubble. Cast your minds back to 1978. You start playing. It's Friday night, early, school's out. Or maybe you've gotten off work. Your DM's running this adventure. It's hack and slay, Maiden and Sabbath pouring out of the stereo, the Led Zeppelin to mellow things out. You feel like Conan, Bran MacMorn, Fofford and Grey Mouser. And then suddenly you walk into a room and everything goes Lovecraftian. Things are not what they seem when dealing with the giants. But what could it all mean? There's no spider symbols here. There's no tokens of House Ella serves, no recognizable Drowic languages, nothing like that. Just something very disturbing, something so awful, something so evil. Even the orcs, who, I should point out, are slaves of the hill giants and will help the party if they can, have tried to shut it up and block it out. Let that sink in. So that is the spice. That is one of the things that makes G1 so fantastic. Yes, Mar. Hey, Merritt. Good stuff. Good stuff. We get a Lamia noble in, I think it's Dweller in the Mirage, but she's not evil. She's the serpent woman. I say she's a Lamia noble. She's not a Lamia noble by AD&D specs. She's just, woman from here up, snake from here down. That is some of that. That is that great. That is the, I would say, I'm just of the opinion that if your party finds that and you play it right, I mean, you've got to go full Paranormal Activity on a party when they enter that. You can't just go, it's kind of a creepy room. There's some black marble on the walls, some green stuff there, You've got to screw with players' heads a little bit. No, same age, Luther. Yeah, I mean, I didn't discover AD&D for another 3 or 4 years, but that is, if you're designing your own modules, see, I kind of did a soft rant for a good 30 minutes about the OSR. I am guilty of the first sin of the OSR, and that is being boring. A lot of my modules are very good dungeon crawls, but not really much more. There's haunted parts in the sense that there's undead, and there's high adventure parts where you just hack your way through bunches of monsters. But there's nothing weird in them. The majority of them. There's nothing truly unsettlingly weird. Now, the far end of DOS OSR, I think, is guilty of much worse because they there's modules that are just all weird. I mean, imagine ordering a pizza. This is all sauce. Just put sauce in a box. No cheese on top, no pepperoni, no crust underneath. Just sauce in a box. It's not pizza, sir. Of course it is. That's kind of where some of the weird fantasy of the OSR leaves me. $6 million man fighting a Sasquatch. We should have had that when Bob was on last week. But that's just one of the spices that is thrown in to G1 that makes it so great. Another thing thing is how hidden so many of the treasures are. There have been more people on tonight. We've had like 30 people in the stream tonight, and I thank you all for that. But we've had 30 people in the stream tonight, and I can't help but worry that some of my players who've never played a G1 or any of the Giants modules might be listening. But there are treasures hidden in places in G1 that are hidden by amazing illusions. Illusion. And Gary doesn't make it easy. It's like, okay, we killed Nosnra, we killed his henchmen, we killed his monsters. We've explored this whole dungeon. We should get all of his loot, right? Maybe. Can you find it? Now, a good party will find it. A good party will find the treasures. That means play an elf. Yeah, Paul. I see you over there, Paul. Paul's in my Monday night game. But a good, attentive, clever party will realize, hey, yeah, we found 6,500 silver pieces, and that's nice and all. But hold up a second. What if Viking Hat GM Kyle, my man, fist bump, brother, continent to continent, boom. All dungeons must be torn apart brick by brick. Now, if you're an a-hole DM and you're like, they found it too quick, I'm not going to tell them. You're a problem. If your players have got their potion of treasure finding, if your players have got their locate object, and I want to find gold coins. If they've got true seeing that they can cast, if they've got dispel illusion ready and whatnot, and they're doing it and they're using it, don't be a dick. Don't take it away from them. Oops. And by that, I mean Richard. Don't be Richard Nixon. Don't be like Richard Nixon to them. The resale value of the land. You collapse the dungeon. You just collapse the dungeon. And the hill giants have already cleared all the trees. You hit it with create water a few times. You got a pond. You've got a meadow. You sell that to developers, brother. That's what you do. Each brick first prodded with a 10-foot pole, Vanderclay 2. Brother, you know what I'm talking about. So all of these elements, guys. And this is not a module that is purely hack and slay. There are role-playing opportunities in this module. Plug your ears, Paul. When in doubt, read it backwards. Some people have said that Arneson was being insulted, that Nosnra was an insult thrown at Arneson. Gary put all kinds of fun stuff like that. I don't think he was insulting Dave Arneson. I could be wrong. Maybe he was. He will have Paul Stormberg come on the show or even pop in the chat and be like, actually, Bill, he was being very insulting. But a collapsible dungeon. I love it. Yes, he was. Gary was a genius wordsmith. There's a group of hill giants you can meet that you don't have to kill, and they don't want to die. I don't mean in the sense of they'll fight you to the death. I mean, to paraphrase the greatest starship captain of all time, James T. Kirk, I think you'll find that they're just as terrified, horrified of the idea of war as you are. And there's just little tidbits in there through there. If you just treat it like Doom, like a Doom level, you're only going to get a Doom level out of it. I mean, when I was in my early 20s and I first played Doom, it used to frustrate me to tears because, the obvious places where secrets were and other weapons were, I couldn't find them. Well, I wasn't putting in the work. I wasn't prodding every brick with a 10-foot pole, such as Doom lets you use it. But Romero and company, who borrowed heavily from AD&D module design with a lot of their worldscapes in the original Doom and in Doom 2, were intent on making you hunt for secrets. I mean, hell, Industrial Zone in Doom 2, it was 2016 before the final secret was cracked in that. I'm going to put in a cleric of an ape cult called Tnauix. Tnauix. I put a villain in my Monday night game named Temuskar. I thought of two rivals of the University of Alabama in the Southeastern Conference of college football. Well, all collegiate sports in the region we call the Southeastern Conference. Texas A&M University, TAMU. South Carolina, S.CAR. Temuskar. He really did, Rich, and yet at the same time, I was 11 when I picked it up, and I got it. Roll damn tide. And I should point out that Alabama alum, I don't know if he's in the NFL. I'm going to let Imperial Ramblings look that up and let me know. But Alabama alum, and I just went completely blank. Not Slade Bolden, which is a D&D enough name right there. I would run a D&D character named Slade Bolden. I mean, come on. That is, it's 1983. It's a winter night over an extended weekend, and we're playing D&D all 3 days level of, what's your fighter's name? Slade Bolden. Everybody would laugh and say, okay, Slade. But by the end of the weekend, he's a memorable guy, right? Hale Hentges. That's who I was thinking of. Hale Hentges. That's not a fantasy D&D name. It absolutely is. Hale Hentges. But Hale Hentges was a gamer. Well, I mean, he still is. Like, I think he's on like the 10th anniversary or something of Skyrim, or maybe it was Oblivion or something. Like, on his Twitter feed, which is normally there's a picture of him or an animated GIF of him practicing or making some big play in an Alabama game. Dedication, work, roll tide. Just after that, it's like, happy anniversary to this fantasy computer game. It's like, yeah, one of us. Hey, Dungeon Minister, how are you? Good to see you. And he would catch everything and everyone would hate him, but he'd still be awesome. Slade. The glory days of I'm going to get you, sucker. Absolutely. Terrible, awful, hated Slade Bolden. Sure would kill him. Rich Powers. Oh, that's right. It is Holy Week. Well, Dungeon Minister, thank you for being here. I mean, I know you must be you must be up to your rectory and work. I'm so sorry for that. But anyway, to get back to Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, and to kind of tie in what Rich was saying about Gary, again, I was 11 years old when I picked up D&D, and when something, so many things, just the glossary. I love words. The glossary in Keep on the Borderlands made me so happy, not just because it made me understand things, but because it was more stuff. I was just like, get in there, Data. Get in there. Get into my brain. That's awesome. Just click, pushing more in there. It's like finding memory that works with your computer for really cheap, but it's really quality stuff. You're like, oh, click, click. That was how much I loved seeing that glossary. And there's an even bigger one in the Dungeon Master's Guide. When Gary said, orcs are a fecund race, I'm like, what does fecund mean? Sounds kind of dirty. And, I'd go for the dictionary. Oh, no, they just have a lot of children. Okay. You'll hear my confession later. Oh, yeah. Savers. I love words, Merriam-Webster properly. I have to, this is such an awesome thing. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote a section of the year for the Oxford English Dictionary. Like, he basically added new words, edited. He worked on a chunk of the Oxford English Dictionary. And someone wrote him a fan letter complaining about the fact that he said dwarves with a V. It should be dwarfs with an F, or with an dwarfs with an FS, not VES. Well, thank you very much, Ben. I was a month shy of 11 when my 9-year-old brother bought the basic box set, and I was worried he couldn't play it as it was ages 11 plus. Didn't that throw us all as kids? Like, on the box, it would say, ages 10 and up. Oh, I can't play. I'm only 8. But, what was I? Oh, God. It's right there. I've lost it. Oh, Tolkien, right. But Tolkien's response was great because they quoted an earlier edition of the OED to him. His response, Tolkien's response, first of all, he laid out why it was dwarves with VES, not FS. And he said, also, please do not quote the Oxford English Dictionary at me. I wrote it. I mean, that is great. A time limit, 11 plus years. I like that too, Imperial Ramblings. But yeah. I mean, Gary was constantly sending me going for the dictionary or looking in the glossary. And to this day, I use Nota Bene, N.B. when I'm making notations. Vis-a-vis. I knew the term, but I didn't really start using it a lot until I saw it show up. But to go back to G1 and still stay on the tack of Gary's literacy, he didn't pull punches. He didn't waste a lot of time. Gary doesn't talk to us about what, Nosner's wife's feelings on all of this. That's on you. If you, the dungeon master, care about it, or if you, the player, care to ask the DM, it's up to the DM to put that in here. Maybe she loves it. Maybe she goes down and strips to her altogether and has a swim, has it like a treasure bath. Maybe she hates it. Maybe she wants to go up and live in the hills and have him brain her a couple of elks for her to cook for supper. raise a couple of dozen whelps. But it doesn't deal in extraneous nonsense. The module focuses down. Hey, John David, I can't complain. Hit 1,000 viewers. Hope you can make it to the to the virtual con, the guac. But anyway, Gary does not. He does not overburden us with a bunch of extraneous stuff in G1. I mean, and not even stat blocks, guys. That's what I love about this module. You know, I'm just going to flip to an encounter. 12 bugbears, hit points, 20, 18, 4 times 15, 5, 6 times 14. What's their armor class? What are they wielding? What damage do they do? How far do they move? Do they have special attacks? And so on and so on and so on and so on and etc. That's what you got your monster manual for. Lightweight. Now, this is also a very skeletal module. What I just said about the bugbears, you've got some homework to do. Now, Gary did change that in later module designs. He didn't stick to the hit points only formula. Once he started doing other modules, he kind of went full ham and started stat blocking stuff out. Yes, Tonka Todd, G1, Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, the great one. I wish, this sounds so ridiculous and fanboyish, and I try not to be that guy, right? And I had a lot of great experiences with Gary. Getting to know Gary and spend time with Gary was, at the time that I knew Gary, I think it was really a high point for me. I kind of wish I got his autograph on my G series. I've got it on my copy of B2, on my AD&D books, a couple of other things. But that would have been pretty neat to have. But this module, let's see. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, yeah. So here we are. Now, one of the big encounters, Tonka Todd, there's always time, my friend. Part of the reason I'm going into this, part of the reason I'm explaining this is to hopefully sell you on it. Hopefully you'll go buy a PDF of this and you'll get it printed and you'll want to play it. But I mean, listen to this. I'm going to read this whole thing. We're going to wrap up with this in talking about the genius of this module. And dudes, we're going to do G2, G3, especially G3. And then D1 and D2 and D3. The in-depth approach that I've taken to AD&D, play the whole Giant series. But the in-depth approach to AD&D is such that you're going to get the same view of the G series. This is not like a review. This is an overview. This is a deep dive. I'm not going to go into printings. I'm not going to go into rarity. I'm not going to go into what you're going to pay for this. Just go buy a copy from drive-thru. Get it. Read it. Love it. I knew what you meant, Tonka Todd. It's all good, my friend. But here we go. Long haul. This 80-foot long passageway is a dim, shadowy, and generally deserted and ignored, for all of the feasting and fun is beyond in the Great Hall. A few torches burn along either wall. Now, Great Hall is part of that. Great Hall This place contains... Oh, sorry. Guys, I'm really having a hard time reading it. My apologies. I should have my readers on here. This place contains trestle tables, benches, stools, etc. To the north of the fire pit, where a whole ox, 2 sheep, and 4 pigs roast. There's a higher table where the chief and his wife, the cloud giant, the sub-chief, and 3 of the stone giants are seated. On the wall directly behind the chief is a small ballista, which he can use as a crossbow, 30 feet range, fires 1 time around, 3 to 18 versus man size, 4 to 24 versus larger. It fires spears, and there are 6 of these. Barrels and kegs of ale and beer and mead stand here and there. All of the tables are full of various sorts of meat, cheeses, breads, and drinking containers, horns, mugs, cups, etc. There is singing, talking, laughing, shouting, arguing, wrestling, joking, and the like going on, so the place is a veritable din of noise. The following creatures are in the hall: Chief Nosner and wife, 65-41. He fights as a frost giant, she as a mammal hill giant. Sub-chief, 49 hit points. Cloud giant, 63 hit points. 3 stone giants, hit points, 51, 48, 43. 22 hill giants, hit points, 44, 3 times 40, 39, 5 times 38, 5 times 37, 3 times 36, 33, 30, 2 times 27. 8 ogres, hit points, 31, 29, 3 times 28, 27, 26, 20. Cave bear, beneath chief's table, 43. Each giant wears 1 to 4 pieces of jewelry worth 200 to 1,200 gold pieces each. Ogres wear but half that amount, 200 to 800 gold pieces each. The sub-chief will have 4 pieces. The chief and his wife also have pieces of jewelry, each worth 1,000 to 8,000 gold pieces. The chief's pet bear has a studded collar with 6 rubies worth 1,000 gold pieces. Note that various servants and orc slaves will be entering the great hall from the west. That's it, guys. That's what you, the dungeon master, have to work with. That's all that you, the dungeon master, are burdened with. What will the hill giants do? How will they react to your party's intrusion? It's up to you. Everything I told you fits on a column that tall and that wide. That's not even half a page. Yeah, you try and sleep spell those giants, it's going to go bad for your party. Guys, that's it. That's you, the dungeon master, have got to tactic that out. Is the party going to kick the door in and be like Unforgiven? You know, where you just say, any of y'all don't want to get killed, get out of the way. And then you drop a fireball, ice storm, cloud kill, cone of cold, wall of flame. How the players are going to deal with the room is entirely up to the players. There's no, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. The only tactical thing given is that Nosra will grab the ballista and start shooting. So anyway, I started blasting. And that's it. Tell me that's not genius. Tell me that doesn't vault heads and shoulders above the overwrought, overplanned, overthought, overwritten, overdrafted, overdone modules that have come along in years since. It's slick and it's dangerous and it will absolutely positively dead a party. But from a dungeon master's point of view, it is a clean user interface. There's no clutter there. And you're going to see that again and again when we talk about G2 and we get more into the creepiness of G2 and I talk more about the map design of G2. Because G2, if you haven't seen G2, I can't wait to show you that. It's going to throw you for a loop if you're not ready for it. Because let me tell you, it is different. At this point, if you've gone out, you killed some weekends or maybe a whole weekend, in one go playing G1 Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, and you're like, I'm going back to the comic shop. I'm going to get a copy of G2 Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. It's another big dungeon crawl. Next time we talk about this, guys, y'all, if you haven't seen it, are in for a shock. And I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So, if you have a group, if you're sitting on the, and look, let me tell you something. If you want to port this thing over and make it fit, if you want to, this can be played with AD&D with zero modification, no modification, none. It is perfectly backwards compatible with AD&D. Stick that in your pipe. It also works pretty well for very high level basic D&D. I don't have Palace of the Vampire Queen. I don't. Thought about picking it up. I have sat around. So sort of thought about that. But get that module, get a group together. If they're high enough level, start there. I mean, there's really, if you've got a high level party and you don't know where to go, like, your 9th level, Now, again, I have seen people say, oh yeah, you can do this with a 6th level party or a 7th level party. If you've got a 15 to 20 person strong group that meets a couple of times a week, yes. If you have 6 players and they're 6th and 7th level, absolutely not, particularly if some of them are going to be level capped. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this look at Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. Tomorrow, before we get into AD&D, I'm thinking, you know what? I think tomorrow we're just going to have Open Tuesday. We'll just talk. We'll talk more about Guac. Yes, of course. How could I forget? Bards of Greyhawk? They're linked in the description. Go check them out. They have songs about the Against the Giants series. Because I want to give this much time to G2. I want to give this much time to G3. So I think Wednesday we'll do G2. Does that work for you guys? Wednesday we'll do Dungeon Module G2, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. And we'll have just a final time. We'll have a final time. Listen, I want to thank everybody who's been on the stream. I want to thank Volcano God for the super chat. I've just kept that up there because that's the essence of everything that I wanted to talk about today. I want to thank our patrons, and I'm gonna let me get over here. Let me thank our patrons. Digital Discord, Joshua Garlock, Lord Corion, Ricky Maru, Mobius, Kevin Reynolds, Doomsword Deathmaster, Mark Simpson, Damien247. Do you prefer X247 or Damien247? Damien X247, let me know. James F. Keck, William Smith, The Dungeon Minister, Manny Wall, Mark Corey, Kevin Wood, Todd Sharp, and frighteningly, Carnivore Farmer. I want to thank all of you guys for being patrons and contributing to the show. I love all of you guys. Everybody who supports the show, everybody who drops by and says hi, and watches and leaves a comment and tells your friends to subscribe. And please do tell your friends to subscribe. Yes, we have reached the goal of 1,000. Onward. I have already made the promise. I don't know that it'll happen ever. But if this channel ever gets 10,000 subs, I'll do a real convention. That's right. I'll have a real convention. That one we'll have to pay for, but we'll have a real gaming con you can come to and play games and do all sorts of fun stuff. So don't think that just because we've hit 1,000 that I'm happy. I'm always trying to be happy, but I'm always trying to do just a little bit more for you guys. So thank you again for being here. Extra big shout out, super duper thank you to Boganora, aka Imperial Ramblings, Eye of the Beholder, and Yang Yan Zhao for helping me really get the audio dialed in this weekend and helping me test out virtual microphone so I can do proper opening credits. And I'm gonna do some end credits too. I'm working on some end credits with the song from our other musical friends over at Tinkham Road, Owlbear. No, close out with Owlbear. I think that'd be fun. But it's not ready yet. It'll be a while for that. So you guys have a positively wonderful rest of your Monday. I'm fixing to go play some first edition AD&D. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to roll some dice. I'm ready to watch a party, draw swords, and hack stuff apart. And I'll tell you guys all about that game later. Listen, I love every one of you, and I mean that. I really mean that. Take care of yourselves.